Hey there, lady. My name is Molly Conley, and I'm devoted to helping women reinvent their love lives. Whether that's after divorce, dating on and off the apps, or in their committed relationship. Why? Because I've been there. I'm a former college athlete who filed for divorce 3 years into marriage, swam in the online dating pool into my late 30s, and now I'm married to the man of my spreadsheet dreams who I met 4 months before the world shut down. As a dating and relationship coach, I help my clients build a foundation filled with clarity, connection, and confidence, knowing Mr. Right is worth waiting for. Each week on the podcast, I'll bring you love life insights and savvy guests where you will receive the courage to release programmed limiting beliefs, discover patterns and behaviors restricting you from finding and attracting quality men, and ways to choose yourself first so you can build a foundation for a healthy relationship with yourself and a partner. Hey there, lady. Thank you for joining me on the podcast this week. You're in for a treat. I have my husband, Brad, back for another couch conversation.
Hello.
But this time, we're going to talk about my one and only spreadsheet. I had the conversation a little bit this weekend with Brad about the man of your spreadsheet dreams and discussing how does it feel that I'm using this in my coaching as well as discussing you on a regular basis and how women can find the man of their spreadsheet dreams. But through all of that, I didn't realize that we haven't really gone through the history of our spreadsheet, meaning talking about it with you and all of that. So, what do you remember about the first time or so when I told you about my spreadsheet?
I think it was fairly early on. I mean, got to be within a couple months, I would think, that you told me you had one and kind of in general it existed and, that you didn't really share it at the time. But, I think in general, you said you had a spreadsheet with qualities on it, with ratings and relationship must-haves. And it wasn't just about qualities of personality and things like that. It was all the things that have to do with that my life or the potential mate's life and even parts about their family and lifestyle. And I mean, I thought it was interesting. I think it's a little bit shocking at first, but once I thought about it, I think because we're so similar, I thought, well, it makes a lot of sense to be organized about what you're looking for. And I knew you to be at that point a very organized person. And you and I both work with spreadsheets on a regular basis. And it really was kind of logical to me.
Yeah. And so I would have to say, your response was probably the best response I'd ever had when I would slip out that I had a spreadsheet. Most of the time, if I did end up liking someone enough and told them I had a spreadsheet, I would have a variety of reactions. And some of them would be like, oh, you are so, anal or type A, and how can you, pigeonhole someone to, you're crazy thinking that someone's ever going to make up all this in your life or be this type of person for you. So when I did share it and you said it was logical, what did you still think though of me when I shared it to you? Was that still kind of
I th-
different?
I mean, it was a little bit different, but it's still, I could see, I mean, I could understand other people's reactions like that other guys would react that way. I mean, even use the word, if they use the word pigeonhole, it's like, well, that's not even what you were doing. You were very thorough, and expansive in your list of things you were looking for. And, by that, I knew your history of, what you'd been through with divorce and other relationships. And, you talk about dating with intention right now. And it just, I mean, it made sense to me. It's like, well, I could probably see that's something if I had thought about it, would have done something like that, right. I mean, we're both big list people. So it's like a list, on steroids, basically.
It was bodybuilding capabilities.
Yeah. I mean, it was, I could imagine it started out as kind of a list or something small, and they're like, well, I'll just put this in a spreadsheet. Then like, well, I'll give it ratings and I'll develop these different categories and, things like that. I could see myself doing that. like I said, we both use spreadsheets on a regular basis. Not everybody does. I forget that sometimes. I mean, I literally use Excel every day of my life in my job.
I mean, VLOOKUPs used to be one of my most favorite things.
Right. Pivot tables, and at least it doesn't have pivot tables, I don't think, right?
No, I mean that.
Sort
Why
by.
would you even need a pivot table for this?
Then you could sort everything out. No, I know you could sort it anyway, but
Actually, now you're making me think of how I could add on to
I know
this. That's not a good idea.
you could add some functionality. Yeah, add some macros. I never learned to program.
Oh God, no, I didn't either. I thought that would be just too much.
But anyway, like I said, I understand some people's reaction, but I think that even if I thought Mel is a little bit weird, I wouldn't even think, anal. Yes, some people that's their opinion, but like it's organized, it's intentional, it's sick of whatever I was doing before doesn't work, so let me try this.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of all of that. So I think in the end, it wasn't a big shock to me, and it didn't turn me off or put me off or anything like that. I think it just made sense. I mean, it was your way of getting to where you needed to be for us to meet on Match. So
Yeah, like that's another thing. Now that I think about it, when was the first time I actually showed you the spreadsheet? Because we discussed before we started recording that he did see it, and I thought if you did see it, it was very brief.
That's exactly what I was going to say. When I did, it was brief.
I was really
very
nervous.
brief, and we didn't. I think you just kind of scrolled through all the categories. I know we didn't go through all of them in depth, or I haven't even seen them all. I remember there were 63 or 65 different qualities we're calling them for now, because I think that, I mean, the one I remember obviously was, I had cats, and you specifically had can't have cats. It was like one, or shouldn't have cats or something was on there.
That was one of the two.
The exception that I got.
But that was because I had a very strong nose, and most of the people I had been around before did not take care of their cats. I now have friends that have cats, and I can't even tell that they have them at their houses. But
well, that's a real issue. I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
I think you also didn't really know fun cats or nice cats, or seem to have a different image of their personalities, which is understandable. You're not a cat person at all, but
I mean, I'm more of a cat person than I've ever been.
Yes.
But, I'm definitely a dog woman.
Yeah.
But
yes, I do. I remember you told me that part early on before I saw it. And then I think, just like less than a minute, maybe looked at it just to get an idea of what it was. But yeah.
But now, before we started recording, you saw the spreadsheet.
Yes.
So let's look at that again.
So that's the most I've seen it. Yes.
Yeah.
I'll go back and look at it.
Okay. So when you look at it now, what do you find to be the most interesting part of it?
I think what jumped out to me, and we talked about just briefly now, is the thoroughness, the depth of it, because I mentioned there's we'll call them line items, not even qualities. 65 line items, and because if you call them qualities, it really doesn't do it justice. Because if you go up to some average person and say, "Oh, well, what qualities are you looking for in a person?" If they list 10, they're probably trying hard, and that's fine. That's all about, okay, they're thinking, I want them to be nice, I want them to be funny, I'm gonna treat me well, like the really basic, like no brainer, like bare minimum stuff is what people come up with.
I mean, basic stuff that you would actually think of wanting with a friend.
Yeah. And that, without we ask somebody that, they're not putting too much thought into long term, and I think that's what I see here is thoroughness from thought, thinking through this process, not just personality and physical traits and things like that, but these are like, what is this person's lifestyle? Does this person get up early in the morning? Do they like to stay fit?
Actually, that's a really good one. So let me actually go into that one. So for one that I have here, line item 24 is that he eats healthy. And how I put on here too, on some of these, that this came from a certain app. And I could look at that and see it right away. But just because someone puts it on the app doesn't mean it's true. And when we were hanging out, you did eat healthy enough, and you were very focused on your health and what you were eating. And we ate very similar, because I had been in previous relationships where someone would say they would eat healthy, but they would only eat healthy during the week, and then they'd eat like shit over the weekends, and they'd party their ass off. And next thing you know, like I would feel like, because we would be together all the time or hanging out on the weekends, and it would just be like, okay, now I've gained 5 to 10 pounds. I feel like shit. I'm sleeping like shit. What's going on? Okay, well, if I change how I eat, all of a sudden it's like, no, I don't want to go out to that restaurant. Oh, why are you wanting to eat a salad again? Do you feel like you're fat? Like all the comments of shit that women get that men think they maybe they're joking or they're flirting. And it's like, that stuff's not fun. And I would love it if someone would eat healthy with me right now for numerous reasons. And it can even go farther, like what you said, the thoroughness. This is even taking an account of like, I want to be with you for so much longer than I've been with everybody else. I want to make sure we get into our 80s and our 90s, and still have a healthy lifestyle. So, what does that mean? That means that I want someone who's taking care of himself right now. And that means you're working out, you're eating, you're caring about your health in general. So,
And yeah, so that's not even, I mean, so the things you mentioned there, that's not just one line item. It's,
right.
several line items, because you could do maybe eat healthy and maybe not work out as much or things like that. So even just thinking through what you want the other person to mirror you in, at least that would really be helpful is, yeah, eating healthy, working out, maybe getting up early. We happen to have all those things in common, and we discovered those in our
Let's
very
just
first
say
conversation.
you got up. You're the first person in my entire life that has ever gotten up before me.
Yeah, I think when we met, I was getting up at
4:30.
4:30
And
and
now we get
sometimes 4:15. So yeah, I mean, it's even breaking those little things out, because like stuff like that adds up. Just
Yeah.
little compatibilities or little incompatibilities. Like what are you willing to live with? I mean,
And live
definitely,
without
yeah, and live without. I mean, definitely, and eating healthy and taking care of yourself. That's
forever.
very important. Yeah, that
Growth.
is, and we knew that about each other right away. So that's not just like, oh, you know, takes care of himself. That's not just one line item. It's it's different things, like you
Well,
said.
so like even on the spreadsheet, yes, because of how in depth I go with my clients and how in depth I went, even for myself for this process, it is one line item. Eats healthy is one
Well, that is,
line
yeah.
item, but to get there and to figure out how it really works within the spreadsheet system, the methodology and the strategy, you have to know those things. You have to have your love life vision. You have to be able to say, what do I want my life to look like when I'm 80?
Yeah,
Do I want to be bedridden and single? No. Okay. Well, what do I got to do also? Because that's the other part of this. If I want him to eat healthy, then what the hell am I doing with my life? How am I showing up and becoming the woman that wants to be with this man, how this man wants to be with this woman? Because if he eats healthy and takes care of himself, he's not going to fucking go for a woman that does the complete opposite.
right. You got to, when you're making this list, you have to be aware of, well, I can't put a bunch of stuff down that I'm not willing to do myself.
Exactly.
And because to my point, you have eats healthy, but you also have takes care of his health and also believes in self-care. So it's even little forms of that, stuff
Mhm.
that's related, but just that's worth putting on a different line,
Yeah.
and have a different rating. So yeah, I mean, you have to, thinking through all this, you did a real deep dive on general things, and then really like, well, what can I break out from? Okay, health. What can I break out of there that's
Hmm.
actually, worth its own line item? And I think there's several categories in here that are like that.
Yeah.
That a lot of people would just be like normally group into one thing, but it's really three or four things, and they all need to be looked at individually.
Yeah, because they have fully impacted our relationship
Yeah.
and they impact how we show up today. I mean, we're just going to keep on the line of health and like how you take care of yourself. So, like, you have your triathlon this weekend as the time we're recording this. And because of that, you know, you have been able to continue during our relationship, during the pandemic, to really branch out and become someone who didn't do these triathlons. Like, how long
Absolutely.
ago? You didn't even do triathlons till we moved here. So,
Yeah, 2022 was the first one.
and before that, you were doing ultimate frisbee
Yeah.
and really enjoying that. But that is such a different practice lifestyle and all those other things.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
keeping the health at top of mind allows there still to be flexibility on what that looks like for the other person. I still have this love life vision of what we want and what I want. And together it works. But then you get to say, well, here's how I want to be healthy. Here's what I'm going to be doing to do it. And it really allows the other person to still grow while embodying this spreadsheet here for two people.
Yeah, and you give me space to do that and support me. So it's not like, like we kind of touched on the example, like, well, what if I got up at 4:30 in the morning and you like to sleep in? I mean, that's been a thing for me in the past. Like, man,
Oh my
I
God,
I
me
need to be
too.
with I at least need to be with a morning person. But like, so yeah, I started doing triathlons. So that kind of changed the way I, eat sometimes. And obviously I train early and I maybe train at certain times, or I need to go like, hey, this Saturday morning,
Yeah.
I can't sleep in. I need to get up and train a little bit. And you've been awesome about that, these last 3 years.
Hmm.
So it's, which makes sense because you have these things down in your spreadsheet. So it wouldn't make sense for you to like kind of hold me back from doing that if I want to branch out and do this, because I don't race to win. I'm not competitive. I'm not a professional, but I've realized in the last 3 years, like training for these triathlons keeps you in great shape,
Yeah.
gives you discipline, and I can do triathlons for fun until I'm, 8 years old. Because there's people in this race this weekend. They're going to be,
Yeah.
upper 70s and 80 years old, and you have master swimmers at 100 and some years old, and
They actually, in 2018, 2019, they actually made a new category because there was a gentleman who was like, I want to keep swimming. I want to keep competing. And so they made a 101 to, no, 100 to a 104
yeah,
age group. So, yeah. And like on the flip side here, you also understand, just even we'll talk about, keep the thing about health here, is that when I decided I wanted to take a break from swimming and not go to nationals, like you understand what that means to me and you understand the level of commitment that it takes.
yeah,
And seeing also that my heart wasn't fully in it this year. And it's like, well, I want to be healthy for other things. There's other things in my life that I need to be really focused on instead, but I can always return to it. And knowing that you've done this allows me to say, okay, well, when I do want to train for Masters Nationals again, we can easily incorporate this back into our lives.
right.
So
Yeah, I look forward to being in the like training season together.
yeah, we'll see how when that when that happens again. But knowing, let's just even like go back a little bit farther. Obviously, we both were single on the apps. I can't remember when you really got on, but I was very dedicated to being on the apps starting in 2017. Like I had been on it, played on it, around after my divorce and in between relationships, but I just would be off within a month thinking this was complete shit. And so when, you reached out to me, we both were on Match. And I think each time you reached out to me was a year apart. So like 2017, 2018, and then the In It to Win It year 2019. Can you tell me that by just like looking at the spreadsheet, I'm going to flip back to it in a second, how much you grew into the man that I was looking for on this spreadsheet? And you can scroll through it too if you need to.
Yeah. I mean, I go back to when it was still called Match.com.
I
I
know.
was like, I mean, and even before my first marriage, like around 2000, 2001, that's when, uh,
What
or
was
no,
it?
2003. I mean,
No.
I was, when it was early on Match.com, I was on there. And then obviously I came back to it in the
What was eHarmony and
2015-ish.
Match.com?
I never did eHarmony because I really didn't believe those personality tests, honestly.
Those were really long.
Yeah. And that was a lot more money too. But, so yeah, I mean, I was, back on in the apps in 2015, 2016. Um, so yeah, obviously in 20, we said what, 2017, 2018, I saw you on there and just
Yeah.
sent you a message and no reply. And I didn't follow up. And I think it was just a single message each time.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. Um, and I
Thank
think,
you.
at least the first thing I think about is that, I hadn't, started the journey of self-improvement, I guess, that we talked about in a previous episode. So if you haven't listened to that episode, go back
I'll
and
link
listen
it in
to
the
it.
show notes. Yeah.
I talked about that first kind of book I read, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, and that was until I think like late, 2018 or 2019.
And then you had read Boundaries too.
Yeah, I read the book Boundaries. That would have been like 2014. The definite, changes, because I talked about in that episode as well, like how I, decided I need to start being intentional. I need to like not just date or be on the apps, and because I'm like, well, I knew I wasn't ready to meet someone
Hmm.
that could be long term, because I knew that like, well, there's still stuff I want to work on and things I knew I should do or think about. And I was just kind of having fun for a while, and so I started to get, in like 2018, started to get serious about, well, I do want to meet somebody, so there's things I want to work on. So that's kind of what got me started into reading some self improvement books and things like
Well,
that.
and to be honest, like the self improvement journey is constant. Like,
Mhm.
I know I have stuff to work on. You say you have stuff to work on. We have stuff to work on as a relationship. And to be honest, like, that's everyone. There's no such thing as healed, in my opinion. Your body heals, but you still have the emotional things still to work through, and it's constantly getting triggered. And how are you going to work through those? How are you going to how do you want to respond versus react? So everyone starts their own journey and continues.
Yeah. And one thing I just saw something on here.
Oh,
I
okay.
did I had some financial goals I needed to address because I was worried about getting into a long term relationship with the financial situation I had at the time. I said I need to fix this before. So I did take some big steps to address that. So that's one thing I noticed on that kind of stood out, as far as a couple line items on here. That was good. Um,
I think this one was really important for both of us for the age that we are.
yes, that's true. Because like I wasn't,
So the line
having
item
kids. Yeah.
is that I said open to the idea of adoption or not having kids at all. And just for someone's backstory here, if you haven't heard, I have polycystic ovarian syndrome. And just quickly to say that when I was 18, I was told that I couldn't have kids. And for me, it was a constant struggle to date men that were like, we want babies. And for women that are there that are like, when are men saying this? Though if you're in the Midwest, there's a lot of men
Oh
that were
yeah.
very early on wanting to have a lot of children. And so there's a lot of men that wouldn't date me because I couldn't have kids. And then at some point, I just said, fuck it. And I was like, well, I would be open to the adoption idea if men were interested. And then as I got older and after I was divorced, like there might be men that had kids. And I was like, oh gosh, how's that going to be the mom hypothetically stepping in? Like, how does this really work? And understanding if that was going to be something that was comfortable for me, and also deciding like, well, what would it be like to not have kids at all? So even just as a woman, like we always have these questions around children and like becoming a mom or not being a mom and like all the fertility issues. But it was a struggle as I got older on how to handle that when dating.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of, or I mean, part of my first marriage, I was open to have kids. I guess it's kind of one of those always things growing up. You assume that's what's going to happen. Then when I got married, I was like, well, I'm not sure if that's what I want. Then I was kind of open to it, and then so really from the period, after I got divorced over the next several years, I kind of went back and forth. I knew I needed. I thought about it a lot. I knew I needed to kind of make a decision because, like, obviously that's important. First,
Right.
second conversation type of thing. And so I had stayed kind of
Hold on,
relatively.
time out. It's a important conversation when people are being intentional with their dating.
Sure, I
Some
guess
people
it could
don't
scare
have
people away.
that
Yeah, that's true.
that right away.
That could scare people away on the first or second date, but not us.
Mm-mm.
So, I mean, I kind of went back and forth a little bit. I was, getting to be, 40 and early 40s. And I was like, well, I'm still open to it. And then I when I was on the apps, I was like, I was still open to, and I was talking to once in a while single mothers because a lot of them out there. And unfortunately, it seemed like that's the majority of the people on the
Yeah.
dating apps, especially my age, or that would be looking at me, were single mothers. And so I talked. Yeah, maybe went on a date with. I don't think I ever went on a date with one, but I talked to a couple. I was open to it, and then I finally reached a point. I mean, it's somewhere probably in 2018 where I'm like, that's actually not what I want. I don't want to. I want to start kind of a new relationship and not have kids. It's not that I didn't want to, not that I just didn't want to be a stepfather or something like that, but I knew that that's not really what well, it's not really what I wanted, I guess I should say. Um,
It's a big
it,
responsibility.
yeah, I was thinking more about my life. Like, okay, say I'm 42 years old. I meet somebody, relationship, get married. That's at least a year and a half away. And then I'm like, okay, I'm 43, 44. And even if they're younger, and it's like, well, then you go right into being a dad. It's like,
Right.
you don't get to have some time without kids. Like say if you were getting married, neither one of you had kids yet. But so the more I thought about it, the more like, okay, I'm okay with not having kids. I'm this age. I have several friends that don't have kids. I would think, okay, how does that make me feel? Do I feel like I should want kids? Do I feel guilty for that? I'm like, no, I think I'm pretty good. I thought about it a lot, and I'm like, well, the people are going to take it the hardest, or like, my mom
Family.
or in family. And I did tell them before we even started dating, at some point when it came up, I'm like, yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. And the reaction was, well, you never know. It's not going to be too late. You can always adopt. I'm like, no, I know. I'm just telling
Well,
you,
I
I'm
meant
not
like,
going to do that.
yeah, but like, yeah, when we started dating and then we got engaged, I know that that still was a question that came up.
Yeah.
But what was for me, I mean, I kind of drove it home with my parents that I'm like, don't expect children out of me after my divorce, especially. I was like, I'm not probably having kids. I don't really want to hurry up and settle down and then just become someone that has to hurry up and have children. I wanted to have the lifestyle where I really, because of our divorce and what we both went through, like it's perfect for us.
Yeah.
Some people really do. They just like they meet the person, they know they're going to have kids together, like that's awesome for them. But these are the type of things where, it on a dating app, you're going to see has kids, doesn't have kids, wants kids, and that conversation is very difficult to have. And you have to really sit back and look at like, how do you want your life to go out? There are people that are like, I am in it to win it, to be a soccer mom and have a van and like all the kids and do other treats. Don't get me wrong, I freaking love making treats and goodies and stuff for like holidays and all that. But um, it depends on what type of life you want. So sitting down and realizing, is this really something that you want? Whether that's, living in the United States or, wanting someone to be healthy and active or having kids, like really envisioning what you want that to look like for yourself. Is there anything else that you see on this spreadsheet that you would like to comment about?
I definitely I think by the time I met you, my politics was pretty evolved, but versus 15 years ago, it's pretty opposite. So that's a way I've grown. And I think that's one of those things that's becoming more and more important these days to be on a spreadsheet like this. What as polarized as things are, but we don't have to go into that. But that's the things you got to think about too, and not think like, oh, well, that doesn't matter. Who you vote for doesn't make a difference in a relationship. It does. It will. It absolutely.
Sadly, it
Yeah.
does.
I mean, any more these days. I mean, if it really, really doesn't to you guys, then that's amazing. But it's just become the point where I'm like, if someone were to tell me they're in the other party, I'd be like, well, there's just nothing we have in common then. So how can we date? And that came up too. I had to tell somebody that I
Actually,
was talking to on an app. That kind of surprised me because she asked if there's any deal breakers. I said, yeah, it's this. And she's like, oh, well, I'm that. And I'm like, oh, okay. I'm sorry. And she was like, oh, are you serious? I was like, well, yeah. I mean, if you, support that, then, you know, there's not, I know that it won't work out. Like that's all I need. That's not being shallow. That's just knowing yourself.
yeah, and that's part of this whole spreadsheet is that the more you know yourself, the more line items you're going to have.
Mm-hmm.
And the
That's a good
more
point.
you're going to be able to break it out and be like, okay, look, line item number 44 knows himself well. So there you go. You just back that up.
Yeah. And it's not so that, yeah, like that's a good point. This isn't all about the other person. This spreadsheet's about you.
Yeah, exactly. I love how you brought that out just in this conversation alone. So thinking back to like some of our first few dates, because we did just tell people that we probably had, actually, I think we had the kid conversation number one.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And I know that we talked about our divorce right away. And
Yeah.
to be honest, most people are like, why do you talk about that stuff right away?
Yeah.
Well,
I got in trouble for that a couple times on
yeah,
the first
people
dates.
like that don't understand. That's fine. We were very obviously people that are in it to win it to find out relationship. But when you think about, I'm going to go back to the spreadsheet for a second. Is there anything that stands out to you that you can still see how I have held myself accountable when I was getting to know you?
But, I've got certain family history of health issues, and some have come up recently, and you are definitely on top of me to get, checkups or do this or that, or,
You've been very good
be
on
on
that.
top of anything that might influence future health. And that's one, aware of health issues and future health. Yeah. I mean, a lot of these I'm sure kind of come up on a regular basis in one form or another, really. We like to plan together. We started doing our financial meetings every week. And, just more recently, that's something I think we both kind of knew we should be doing at some point, and finally got to a point where we just decided, yes, we're going to start doing it. So we've been doing that pretty well, and that was after 3 years of being together.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's money and finances are always a really sticky part in a relationship, whether you're in the relationship first and just kind of like winging it. And then when you're married, it's even another thing. And everyone does it differently. There's so many different ways to learn about how to do finances as a couple. And I think we have found what works for us right now and like how that could change over time.
Mhm.
But yeah, I'm really glad that you can point out a few different areas in here that I still hold you accountable for. You know, which one? What?
39.
39. Yeah, cleans up after self. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
You've gotten
that's every day.
so much better though. You used to not wipe down the counters very well, and now I love where we live because you can see it all the time.
Yes,
But here,
that's definitely one.
so now that we've like had this discussion and we're really like got into it, you've seen it, we've really expanded on it and showed or told people that are listening like how we really have embodied this spreadsheet as a couple now, to be honest. Like it's really shown how our life has evolved in a good way.
Yeah.
If one of your sisters or a niece, if they range in age from like 20s to 50s, like if they were single, what would you say to them about the spreadsheet? Because the reason why I bring them up is because they're a close woman to you versus just any woman you meet.
Yeah. I mean, I'd be all for it. I think it makes sense. I'm sure. I don't know how they'd receive it, but I could explain it in a way that makes sense. I think now, having gone through it, not just say, "Oh, we just create a spreadsheet of qualities." I'm like, well, sure, I can do that. Like, well, no. I mean, this is the depth and the thoughtfulness to go into this. Have to be really explained and explain to them that it gives you intention. It really makes you think about what you're looking for, not just in a person, but in a future life and a lifestyle and in a marriage. Um, and I mean, in their 20s, maybe. I mean, I think it's a good tool after you've already had some experience. I mean, I don't think it'd be like, okay, you just graduated college and you want to find somebody. Here's a spreadsheet. Maybe not quite that, because I think it does help to get some real life experience and have some failures and this and that, which will because then you'll be more inclined to realize this tool could make sense.
Yeah, that's
That
part of the
like,
reason.
oh, I do need to be intentional with this because I haven't been, and you get exhausted to a point, kind of like we were after our divorces. Like, okay, what I was doing before is not working. I need something to help me, and this seems like a good tool that could do that.
And this is part of the reason why the first week that I do this in my course that's coming up is all about relationship reflection. So if you haven't even had like a handful of relationships, ones that have lasted maybe 6 months or longer, this might even be really difficult for you.
Oh yeah,
If this is something where you have been married for 20 years, got divorced, and you're trying to date, this might even still be hard for you. But you're going to learn, you're already going to have a lot of reflections from that one relationship that it's going to pull out stuff that you didn't think was important.
what you said about that jumps in my mind. If you haven't had a lot of relationships, especially if they haven't been like, say, cohabitating, it's like a lot of those things on there, like just like the one we talked about, cleaning up after himself.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, some of that stuff only comes out after you've lived together, lived with somebody for a little while. I mean, you could date and spend time at each other's place and this and that, but there's some of those things that only come out from living together.
Or you could, or if you're like me, I used to be very aware. So for me, when I can be at a guy's house, like if we've been dating for a few months, spend the night, wake up the next morning, and the house looks like complete party zone, and he's okay with sitting on his ass on the couch for a few hours and not like cleaning it up or even thinking about making breakfast or wanting to go out, it kind of would be like, huh, is this a normal habit for him? And I'm just throwing it out there
Yeah.
because sometimes we aren't paying attention to what's really going on to our surroundings when we are dating someone. And that is very helpful when crafting the vision that you want for your love life. It does sound a little nuts sometimes of being like, okay, is this how it looks every weekend? Okay, I'm going to check. Okay, it's been like this every weekend I've come over. How long has it been sitting like this?
All right.
So,
And so in the future, that's the kind of stuff you reflect on. Like, okay, how important was that to me? How did that make me feel? Could I have put up with that longer? Nope. So
nope,
that needs to go in the spreadsheet.
exactly. Do you have any questions for me about the spreadsheet?
Um, I suppose like what made you create initially? Like how did that come about? Like did you sit down and do it all at once, or like I guess in my mind, because I don't know this, I don't think in my mind it'd be like kind of a piece at a time. And like I said, you start with making a list, and then like, oh, put in a spreadsheet, then oh, add some scores, or how did that come about and when?
So I was really tired of the bullshit. I like to tell that to the ladies and my clients. After my divorce, I just did my sabotaging behavior of uprooting and jumping into one relationship after another until I felt like I had enough shit. in relationships and broke up with my last boyfriend. And during that time, the advice I was given was like, oh, just date a bunch of people. And when I started doing that, I realized that my second self-sabotaging behavior of people pleasing would come out, and I would be like, "Oh, this guy's good enough. I should date him." And then that would last a week, and I'd be like, "Something's wrong here," and I'd break up with him, and I'd go back onto the apps and find someone else and do that for a little while. And pretty soon, I was like, "I have no idea what I'm looking for. I have no idea what I like. I tell people I think I know, I sit back and I can describe what he looks like. I can describe that he's always a nice guy, he's caring, just like the same stuff you said at the beginning, but I don't have it down on paper." And back then I was really getting into journaling and meditating and reflecting. And so I would start creating this list. Well, piece of paper only goes so far, and it's like you lose it trying to find it. So then I put it in the spreadsheet. And pretty soon I was like, well, this guy doesn't have this quality. It's not on his, on his app or on the online profile. And then I'd be like, he said he wants this, but he ended up saying this. How the fuck did I figure out is that it's not true?
Mm.
And so I slowly but surely had to keep pulling out this information to say, what is it that I really want? And then what's more important? But then at the same time, it's all important, and really doing that deep dive. And I started coming up with a system, a process, and taking that process to try to hold myself accountable. And to be honest, I really didn't. In the beginning, I was like, oh, let's just give him the benefit of the doubt. Let's go on 4 more dates. Like, let's do this. Let's do that. And I grew tired of the bullshit, but this time it was my bullshit. I was so tired of allowing this to happen to me over and over and over and over again that I created the spreadsheet halfway through the year of 2017. And by then, I had probably already gone on 20 dates with different men
Mm.
because everyone said, just hurry up and find dates. And I was like, that's not really how this goes.
No.
So most of the process happened there. But in order to really help me date with intention and accountability for what I wanted for my future, I had to put in some of these other columns that are in the spreadsheet that women get to see if they're a client of mine or they join the course. So that's how that happened. But if you don't know, there's probably about 4 or 5 versions of this to get it down to where it is before I met you.
How much wine was involved?
I don't know. I
A little
mean,
bit once in a while.
part of the process of using the spreadsheet requires you to do a before and after
Yeah.
of a date. And a lot of women don't fucking do that. I didn't
Yeah.
do that.
No.
And I would be like, oh God, he made me feel so amazing last night. He said the most amazing thing. Fall asleep drunk, wake up the next morning, hungover, pretending like it doesn't matter, freaking out that I said something stupid, and then being like, oh God, I hope he texts me. No, completely wrong. That's not how this goes. Like it's a little bit more in-depth process so you hold yourself accountable so that like you can do this. Because I think back to when you reached out on a Tuesday. I asked you out on a Thursday. We actually met on Friday.
Mhm.
We got food poisoning, so we couldn't go out on our second date on Saturday. But within 2 weeks, I knew that I was going to marry you. I could put my mom on this podcast right here, right now, and she would say that she remembers that we're looking out the window as you're walking away from when we did cookie
Cookies.
weekend.
Yeah.
I said, if that's not the man I'm marrying, if I don't marry that man, I'm not marrying anyone, or someone to that effect.
Yeah, I
Where
remember
if
you
this
telling
is
me
not him, then there's no one for
Yeah.
me. I'm done. So that is what real clarity is all about. That's what intentional dating is all about. That's what accountability when dating is how it manifests for you. I mean, I could have met you in 2017. Would we have worked? Hell no.
No.
I was nowhere near in depth with my list of my line items, whatever we want to call it, within that spreadsheet. I never had that process. I never had the methodology yet.
And I wouldn't have scored as high.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
You would never have made it past the first date threshold because there's different thresholds in here to help you hold yourself accountable. Is he worthy of you? Is he worthy of your love life vision? Are you worthy of that love life vision as well?
Yeah. I mean, it's like you say, it's a concrete way of holding yourself accountable. And that's the only way it works is if you use it and hold yourself accountable and not be, like you kind of mentioned, like be wishy-washy. Like, oh, well, this maybe this line item isn't as big of a deal because, he's really good at this or whatever. But no, because like if you do this process right and create this spreadsheet, then it will help you know, like, no, you can't waver on those. You can't waver on those things. You can't make exceptions because inevitably you'll do that to realize afterwards that, yep, I can't make that exception. Just like
Yeah.
you were talking about, you have to, use it and hold yourself accountable. And I think that's, the really powerful part of it is it's something concrete you can look at and put down. It's a number. I mean, a lot of people like us, we deal in a lot of numbers. It's
Yeah.
something you look at. It's a score. It's something like, okay, and again, this is not shallow. This is not, like, oh, one, hot or not or anything like
Oh
that.
my
This is,
God, hot or
yeah,
not.
not going off.
Oh,
Yeah. Anyway, this is like in-depth thoughtfulness. You've put 65 line items in here, and you're gonna stick to it because you know that it's gonna work. And so I think it's a pretty great invention.
well, thanks, sweetheart. And what's even great too with this, hun, is like you can create your spreadsheet and you can take a break, but your spreadsheet's always going to be there that you can come back to. So like I took breaks from dating because I was so fed up thinking that I was being too picky. I was being too anal, but like it kept evolving. I kept learning about myself because sometimes you do need to take a break to figure out, oh, was this really that important on my spreadsheet or not? Like you brought up. So
Yeah.
taking breaks did help me. But thanks again for joining me on the couch, babe. I appreciate you taking the time to share your thoughts about the spreadsheet too. But just like we were talking about, if you, lady, are interested in creating your very own spreadsheet, register for the Man of Your Spreadsheet Dreams course. So this is a 8-week course that I take you through my process, methodology, and the strategy that literally took me 8 years to find Brad. Obviously, this isn't a spreadsheet course. You're going to go through different phases that will be responsible for, getting yourself over your ex and past relationships, challenging your patterns and behaviors, ditching the one vision board to manifest with clarity, holding yourself accountable to only meeting men that are worth your time, and of course, knowing you found the one without creating numerous dating profiles on multiple apps or wasting your time and energy trying to figure out what are we. So you will discover the real answers between the you who's not making the progress in their love life, like you thought you would have maybe by now, and the one who is, holds this unwavering belief that her Mr. Right is out there because you're no longer entertaining men who don't meet your spreadsheet thresholds. You're going to have access to me in our Facebook group Monday through Friday to ask any questions and even receive coaching throughout the process. There's also going to be 2 integration weeks. Those are weeks 3 and 7 with 1 hour of Q&A and coaching available. Then each week, there will be a live session over Zoom where I take you through a step-by-step process to help you take control of your love life and empower you to make it all your own. You're going to receive weekly homework and supportive resources as you gain the clarity you need to date with intention and accountability, like I brought up during this episode. So at this time, I'm only taking a total of 10 women into the course, and we have 6 seats left. So if you are a lady on the waitlist, your special pricing and bonuses expire when the clock strikes midnight on Wednesday. Same goes for the bonuses that my email list has received. Now, with that said, if you listen to this podcast episode after May 15th and you wish you could have joined the course, reach out to me on Instagram. I'm going to keep the doors open until Friday, May 31st, if there are spots available. After that, the doors are going to close, and I don't know when I will run this course again this year and at this price point. So there will be more information available on my website, so I will also include that link in the show notes. But once again, babe, before we go, do you have anything else that you want to add?
Um, I was always surprised with how high I rated. Honestly, I mean, it seems like you're going to create a rating system. You know, maybe you want to create it so nobody can actually get to 100% because nobody's perfect, which I'm not. I know like the cats were one thing off, and I forget what the other thing was, but um, I just it, you did that. I mean, you created that spreadsheet, and you didn't respond to me twice, and then the third time, you had the spreadsheet. You could see what was in my match, only what was in my profile at that point. Obviously, that did pretty well on the spreadsheet by itself, and then after the first date, pretty much filled in the rest. I think by the first or second date,
Yeah.
you'd be able to fill in the whole spreadsheet with the actual full scores.
Well, here's the fun thing. once you know your spreadsheet inside out, you have the best questions to ask on a date.
Well, yeah, that's a good point because that's what you did. I mean, that spreadsheet, looking back, guided the entire conversation of the first night, which was fine because it was stuff that I want to talk about too. So,
And we had how long was our first date?
six some
7.
hours,
Yeah,
six,
6 or
7
7.
hours. Yeah. So yeah, I mean that, and then by that you probably went home and filled all the scores in.
Actually, I
And,
was really tired,
well,
and then
yeah, it
we
was
had
late.
food poisoning the next
That's
morning.
true.
So then that afternoon, I was like, "Where's my
Yes.
spreadsheet?" Like, it was so horrible.
So I mean, yeah, I think I think it's a tool that would be helpful to a lot of people, and I think it's just a really interesting concept. And if there's people out there that are sick of the other apps or don't know what to do next or like wanting to try something different, this is something that you know that you can do pretty easily and you can take control of and you know get guidance from Molly on how to make it your own, how to go through the whole process. Because again, it's not just, and she'll tell you this, I assume, in her course, it's not just creating the spreadsheet. It's not just an Excel file. There's obviously a lot of work that goes into it to get to that point. Before, during, and after you create it. Using it and how to use it. So I I would encourage anybody out there that this sounds interesting to take a look at it.
Well, thanks, babe. I really do appreciate you coming on. And thank you, everyone who is listening and joining us today. I will chat with you ladies next week. Can't stop settling? Sign up to receive daily words of wisdom. I call them Lady Love Lessons. They're for ambitious women like yourself who are tired of hearing they're too much or that they're not enough. It'll help give you the tough love and motivation to choose yourself first. All you have to do is go to my website, reinventingthearena.com, and scroll to the bottom of the homepage to sign up. I'll see you in your inbox.